Hi everybody, thanks for stopping by to check out the latest from Sailing Emerald Steel. In this video, Jules is going to give a little refresher course on the type of sailing rigs and a little bit of the history on sailing ships. Before we get started though, we'd like to thank all of you for your comments and thumbs up on our last video. We really appreciate hearing from you.
In last video, we discussed the basic rules of road for sailors, which we felt it's kind of important for people to know. And in this video, I would like to get into a deeper discussion about sailing boats, a different kind of rigs, because I find it very interesting when I talk to someone and they do not know the basic things of their own boat. We anchored here by the cruiser anchorage, where people gather before they go down south to Baja, Mexico. One guy came by with a dinghy. He said, "Oh, Emerald Steel, I watch your videos." I said, "Oh, that's good, thank you." And I said, "Are you going to Mexico?" He said, "Yeah, I got myself a new boat and I'm going to Mexico." And I said, "Oh yeah, what kind of boat did you get it?" He said, "Oh, I got myself a 40-foot collar catch." I said, "Oh, you got yourself a 40-foot collar catch." Now I was thinking, there's no such a rig exists as a collar catch, but anyway, he said he had a collar catch, so didn't try to make him feel like a stupid. I asked him, "Can you point out which boat is yours?" And he pointed out down his boat, and I looked at it. Yeah, she was a catch. She had a dual headsail, but she surely were not a cutter. So anyway, we had a little talk, and then when he left, I was thinking, when you tell people about different rigs, then they don't even know their own rig. Sometimes they may get insulted, like you know it all. So I decided just to make a simple video. This way if somebody wants to learn, they can listen. Those of you who already know it, fine, might refresh your memory. But anyway, here we go. First I would start with a simple rig, which is most common. It's a sloop. And sloop, it's a single mast sailing vessel with a mainsail and a headsail called a jib. Now next rig, we have a cutter. Now let's make an understanding what a really cutter is. To understand the cutter rig, you got to go back into 1700s. It came from the English word, where the English Navy decided, because a sloop had a too big of a boom, carry a very large mainsail, they decided to shorten the mainsail. So the way they went about it, they moved the mast aft. So they pretty much stepped the mast 1/3 of a waterline aft from the stem. So by reducing a mainsail, they was able to put a headsail, which they call a staysail. So now they have a same amount of sail area, because what they cut out from the mainsail, now they have a extra in the staysail. It would be easier to handle the sails because of a much smaller mainsail. Because if you look at the boats of 1800s, the mainsail, actually the boom overhang several feet past the stern of the boat. A mainsail was in say a common 36-foot boat was over 600 square feet. So it was very, very hard to handle it. The same token, you can say that a sloop also can have a two headsail. Actually, sloop can also have a three headsail. It can have also inner jib, outer jib, and a flying jib. But the mainly thing what makes a cutter different from a sloop, it's a position of the mast. And you see today it really doesn't matter, because a Marconi rig, the mainsail, is nothing like an old gaff riggers. So when you look at sloop today, or what they call a cutter, you will find out that the mast, it's triangle Marconi rig, has a very short boom, so there is no question about had to reducing a mainsail. So you cannot really tell the difference between one from the other. Now,
Except for our boat, which has a big mainsail.
Yes, because our boat is a old-fashioned design with a gaff rig, and that's why it's cutter. Because if we had a sloop, our mast would be more forward, and our mainsail would be over 600 square feet, so it would make it much harder to handle it. Just like a time of Slocum, Joshua Slocum, he sprayed this had an extremely large boom, and then he cut it down and he installed a second mast to make a yawl out of it.
So how big is our mainsail?
Our mainsail right now, it's a 475 square feet.
And it's a handful to deal with too.
Yes.
Okay.
So anyway, our next sailboat is the one with the two masts. Now, two mast sailboats, you have pretty much three rigs. You have a kedge, yawl, and a schooner. Now, there is many other kind of rigs which are not very much in use, so I'm not going to be discussing them, but I only discuss the one which are the main.
Fairly common.
Fairly common. The kedge has a two mast with a main mast forward, and aft it's a smaller mizzen mast, carry two sails, plus your headsail. You can have a 1, 2 headsail, even 3 if you want to. The next one is yawl, and the difference between a kedge and yawl is the yawl aft mast is stepped behind a rudder post. It's very important, has to be behind a rudder post, and the mast is shorter usually than a kedge rig. And then you have a schooner rig where a main mast is aft and a mizzen mast, the shorter mast is forward. So that's pretty much your standard schooner rig. Now, somebody says that the only ship you call a one which is carry all square sails, but not really quite correct. Next would be a two-masted ship which has a forward mast square sail and an aft mast fore and aft sails, gaff rig in other words, gaff rig. That ship is called brigantine. Now, if the ship with a two masts and both of them have a square sail, it's called brig. The next comes a three-masted sailboat. If the first mast has a square sail and the remaining two masts have a fore and aft or a gaff sails, it's called barkentine. Now, if the two front masts are square sails and the aft mast is a fore and aft rig or a gaff rig, it's called a bark. And now, if all three masts are square sail, then it become a full rig ship.
And it can have more than three masts too, right?
Yeah. And then we have a ship's 4, even 5-masted. But again, if they have all square sails, they are full rig ships. And if they are all, say, gaff rigs, you can have a 5-masted schooner. So that alone does not say what kind of boat it is. It's the kind of sails you have it. So now you know pretty much about the sails rigs. In middle 18th century, all your full rig ships were very bulky, with a great beam and really a full bow. So she would not dive into the sea, but would have a lot of lift. And it didn't matter how slow she went, as long as she can carry a lot of cargo. But in the mid-1800s, we opened 3 new routes. One was from England to China, one from the east coast of United States, from New York to China, and finally a route from east coast of New York around the Cape Horn into the west coast to San Francisco for a gold rush. So now they needed ships which would be much, much faster. It didn't matter how much it cost, just had to be very fast, because who was the first one was able to bring a fresh tea or spices from China could demand the highest price. The same thing, people who could deliver all the necessity to the miners in San Francisco, all the necessary things they needed, could demand a higher price. Now you have to understand that San Francisco was the fastest growing city in the United States. So nothing there was they could make their own. So even simple thing like a shovel or pick or anything you can think had to come from the East Coast. So everything was very, very expensive. People made an unbelievable amount of money, but everything also cost very, very much. So right at that time, there was a young architect who came with a new design, and he made a first boat which is known to be a clipper. And the clipper ships made a difference was this here. It was much narrower in a beam and very pointy in a bow. Now, to prevent a boat from diving underwater with a very pointy bow, right above the waterline, he made a very big flare. So that would give a lot of buoyancy. Once she got into the wave, she would have a much lift. Now, some of those clippers went over 22 knots. So they were able to cut not days or hours, but a month from the sailing, say from China to New York with those ships. Now, final improvements to those boats was by putting very, very tall rigs. Now, that's a time when rigs came up to be known. There was just miles or ropes and acres of sail material. So we had a mainsail known as a course. We had an upper mainsail, have a top gallant. We had a royal. We had a skysail, and on top of that, some of them even carry a moonraker. Now those sails was unbelievable. It required many men to handle it, because in the case of a squall or a big storms over Cape Horn, you have to work that ship very fast, and those masters drove those ships very hard to the last minute. They would not want to take sails down before it's time needed, because lots of them were in a racing where they could have a bet, and if they get it there first, they can get a bonus as much as $10,000. Now $10,000 in those days would be an unbelievable amount of money. Now those ships, after 1 or 2 voyages, got paid for it, so they were very good money maker. But you had to have a really good captain and reasonable crew to make these boats sail very fast.
And God help the person that had to go up to the very top of the mast to reach the topsail.
Yeah, I can imagine. There is another story to it, how those people were sailing those rigs across the bottom of the ocean. That's why they call it Iron Man. So now you have some back stories about old ships. There were much different ships than today. And the truth is, in the end of 18th century, sailing ship will start going down because steam took over. So most of those boats, their mast was cut down, and they just used them more or less like a barges to carry lumber and so on. So the big age of the tall ships and Iron Man came to the end, and then a big change came with the Marconi rig. But the truth is, an all sailing vessels with a Marconi rig are not made for a really commercial usage. Those clipper ships and gaff schooners, they are really workhorses of the American in the 18th century, carry a lot of cargo between the states up on the East Coast. And although, you know, there were times when people tried to beat the records from East Coast of New York to San Francisco, and also it's not a really fair comparison, because when they compared a square rigger going around a Cape Horn, they were full loaded with many tons of supplies in the middle of the southern winter, in the gales, in the southern winter, with winds blowing over 80 knots, and the seas could be 50, 60, 70 feet tall. So today nobody goes into this kind of condition to sail. So even if they try to beat the record, it's not really a fair comparison.
They were a hard man.
Yeah. So that's it. I hope you got something out of it. And I kind of feel like everybody should have some basic knowledge about sailing and sailing ships when they really want to get involved with the sailing.
Okay guys, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed the video and got something out of it. And if you did, don't forget to leave a comment and a thumb up. And as usual, we'd like to thank all of you that support our channel through Patreon and PayPal. We really appreciate your support, guys, and we will see you all next time.
Bye-bye.